Hi, good morning, everyone. My talk will focus on the findings of my honours project, which dealt with Melaleuca parvistaminea, and I will also conclude this talk with a brief outline of my MSc. So some Callistemon and Melaleuca species have naturalized in the country. That's an example. One example, by Melaleuca pericifolia at Hout Bay and Callistemon rigidus near Wolsely in the Western Cape. But as yet, Melaleuca invasions have not been studied in any detail, although pericifolia is listed as 1A on the proposed member regulations. So the focus of my honours project is on Melaleuca parvistaminea, which has not been recorded as invasive anywhere else in the world. You can see it occurs between the Tulbagh and Wolsely area, and it creates virtually monospecific stands, surely a threat to the native biodiversity. So we all know that early eradication is beneficial and desirable, but there's a number of factors that influence the success of eradications. One of them being infestation spread over usually areas larger than 1,000 hectares. That's why I assess whether eradication is feasible. So one of the surprise findings of my study, which actually came quite late in last year, was that the identification of the species was incorrect. Initially, the species was identified as Melaleuca pericifolia, but I actually found it out to be Melaleuca parvistaminea, which is obviously closely related. You can see the distributions are actually sympatric. Although there are slight habitat differences, parvistaminea prefers slightly drier habitats. I just like to highlight a few more of the differences. So the pictures that I'll be showing here are for parvistaminea only. So parvistaminea has the rough, not porky bark. It has these flower petals tinged with pink, and also has these raised oil glands, which you can see under the leaves. And then the main reason that led me to doubt the identification was that the species that I was observing is definitely a reseeder and not the clonal rootstock regenerator, which pericifolia is. So in this picture you can see this is recruitment via seed alone. Those are just masses and masses of seedlings. All these reddish stems here are parvistaminea seedlings. So what confused us initially was that we were seeing multiple stems, and we weren't quite sure when one plant started and when, or if it was separate plants. But you can see here, although the species does have a habit of becoming multi-stem, it is always linked to one rootstock. So we've never found plants suckering. So the aims of my project were threefold. Firstly, to determine the current distribution of the species in the country. Secondly, to characterize the population dynamics in terms of size, structure, and recruitment after fire and clearing, and also to determine the age when plants first reproduce, and thirdly, to determine if eradication is feasible. So the species is a small serotinous shrub, meaning that the seeds are stored in these woody capsules. And in its native range, it usually occurs in wetlands or near streams. It has these whitish, creamish bottle brush-like flowers. Okay, these are my study sites situated between Tulbagh and Wolsely in the Western Cape. The first site, the waterfall site, was the first locality reported by itself to SANBI's ISP. It is a forestry exit area which has been managed by conservation since 2000. The site recently burnt in January last year, allowing me the opportunity to assess recruitment after fire. So after this first reported locality, we we spoke to a local forester, and he saw the same species in the plantation over here. So these blue dots are localities which were identified by the forester where the species was present. So the second site is the Pleitesdorp plantation, which is really a variety of situations ranging from managed pine plantation to just unmanaged jungles of invasive species, usually dominated by Australian acacias. The third site is the Pleitesdorp wetland, which has also been managed by conservation, but I think clearing was initially initiated by the old Working for Wetlands project. A clearing contract took place, it actually ended in May 2012 in this wetland, and this gave me the opportunity to assess recruitment after clearing and also to assess the effectiveness of clearing. This picture just summarizes the situation in the setting in which the invasion is found. Seasonally wet areas, in areas either previously or currently associated with plantation. So firstly, to determine the national distribution, the current distribution in the country, I did a national survey by distributing pamphlets since 2010, and I also examined herbarium specimens. Initially, first I identified as pericifolia for any additional localities. Okay, the pamphlets turned up no new localities, but I did find 5 herbarium specimens identified as pericifolia. But actually only one of these specimens was the same species that I was working on, and that's the one on the right over there. You can see both of these are identified as Melaleuca parvistaminea, but clearly these are 2 different species. The one on the left is likely Melaleuca parvistaminea. A recent paper by McGee and colleagues highlights the uncertainty in invasive species listing. And one of the issues that they list here is exactly what I found, taxonomic uncertainty. So I surveyed the known populations by walking these parallel tracks using a handheld GPS and recording where I found plants. This I did for the Pleitesdorp plantation, and remember the waterfall site burnt, so I only GPS the burnt skeletons. So the estimate for that site, it's an underestimate because there weren't any evidence of the smaller plants left behind, just the big adults. And in the Pleitesdorp wetland, the contracting team actually collected data. So this is the waterfall site. The grey shaded areas are the areas I surveyed. The open squares over there are data that was collected before in 2009 and 2010, and all the black circles are data that were collected after the fire. In all these distribution maps, you can see that the populations are always near these seasonal streams. This is the site at the Pleitesdorp plantation. I only managed to survey 7 of the 11 blocks identified by the forester. I just ran out of time. And this is the data collected by the contractors. I resurveyed this area and I found that they missed 52 plants with an average height of 1.7 meters. So that is a bit of a concern because those plants were fairly big. They also didn't stick to the requirements, which we asked them to stack dead material in dry areas because we know that these species need wet areas for germination, and they didn't always stick to that. So in total I surveyed 372 hectares and found about 14,000 plants. However, there's still large amounts of areas which are still unsurveyed, and there are definitely plants in some of that area. So to assess the population dynamics, I firstly looked at the age of the onset of reproduction. I did this by observing absence or presence of reproductive structures, and also I observed age rings, so I aged the plants. And then use a generalized linear model with binomial areas to fit a line to which predicts when that onset actually occurs. The size structure of the population I determined by taking various measurements of the plants. However, I found that height best correlated with age, so I just used height to characterize the size structure of the populations. So you can see the reproductive onset is really between 3 and 4 years, but most plants, well, at least 40% of the plants are reproducing by 5 years. That's a bit of a relief, you know, they don't reproduce that soon. The size structure of the populations indicate fairly healthy populations, ranges of sizes. This is characteristic of an invasion where plants are spreading. So this shows that clearing does trigger seed release. This is 1 week after branches were cut, trees were cut. You see lots of tiny seeds over there. And this shows that fire does trigger seed release as well. This green mat you see over here, all these little spots, those are all seedlings. These are the adults in the background. And you can see water required for the germination. Some germination did take place immediately after the fire. The previous picture was after winter. You can see that's at the end of August. Some germination did take place immediately after fire. You can see usually restricted to wetter areas. You can see these seedlings are much taller, indicating that they germinated immediately after the fire. So January, February in 2012. I also took 1 meter square quadrats, a transect of those underneath the canopy of the burnt adults, and I found up to 18,000 seedlings in a meter square. Okay, so I used this information to be able to determine if eradication is feasible. So this data I did have from SANBI's ISP records and my own cost and time records. I estimated from this that the entire Claykish Kraal plantation, remember I only managed to survey seven of the 11 plots identified, but I estimated that at least the entire plantation needs to be surveyed in order to get a good idea of the distribution. So surveying should cost another 220,000, and then using the data from clearing which was done between 2009 and 2012, I predicted that if all areas were invaded, then clearing would cost at 500,000, close to 500,000. So we know that clearing does trigger seed release and has to be expected, but plants only reproduce at 5 years. Therefore, I recommend that 2 follow-ups be done before plants can reach 5 years after the initial clearing, and this should be able to hammer all of the population. Given that no new localities are found, I think eradication is feasible at a cost of 1.7 million. So just to summarize, parvistaminea is definitely invasive over a fairly large area, and category 1A is recommended for the species. I think that eradication is feasible, even though in the past eradications above 1,000 hectares have been difficult. but there are a number of factors that favor eradication. So, like there's no long-lived seed banks. Literature reports seeds to be viable only for 1 year. Most plants only reproduce at 5 years, giving time for those follow-ups before plants reproduce again. And as yet, there have been no new localities reported. So I think that we need 1.7 million, and we should be able to achieve eradication by 2019, given that no new localities are found. And this research really highlights the need to look at all these species, because as you know, I've mentioned some of the other emerging weeds in this group, and also the taxonomic uncertainty. I think there's a need for this. This brings me to my MSc outline, which will look at dry-fruited Myrtaceae as a functional group on a global scale, while focusing on Melaleuca and Callistemon in South Africa. These are just some of the species present in South Africa. So why, if my honors research hasn't convinced you as to why we need this research, maybe there's a few more reasons. So studying species in groups has been valuable in elucidating information on the processes involved in biological invasions. Pines in Australian acacias are good examples of these. So this is why I think it should be done for other groups, you know, instead of studying species in a piecemeal fashion or in a haphazard way. So I think most of you know, but just to list a few more genera that fall under this dry-fruited umbrella, which are also present in South Africa. There are also many other emerging species, and probably there are going to be new species in the future. Therefore, we need to look at a group like this so that risk can be assessed. So just to wrap up the functional group, I've defined it as Myrtaceae with small seeds in dry fruits, usually associated with wet habitats. So I have three sort of research areas. Firstly, I focus on which factors determine invasion success. There I will look on a global scale at the traits associated with invasiveness, and at which stage of the introduction, naturalization, invasion continuum they are important. In the second one, I look at which species are in South Africa and what are their potential invasiveness, and to what extent have these species been misidentified. And lastly, I will look at the role that water plays in microsite requirements, habitat specificity, and seed release events. So I'd like any inputs that you have into this MSc, please chat in. We can chat in the discussion session or later today. Okay, I'd just like to acknowledge the following organizations and people. Thank you.
Llewellyn, thanks very much. Llewellyn's talk was a bit longer than the others, but we did make up time with the previous presenters, so I will allow one or two quick questions now for Llewellyn. There's a question there. Is that a question? Okay.
That's not sharp.
No, hang on, a second.
Thank you very much. It's quite interesting to see that with your clearing, I think your initial was 500,000, and your two follow-ups was 1 million. And the traditional belief that most of us, I presume, have is that the price, the cost, actually reduce as you go further to do your follow-ups. And maybe you can share with us as to why, what influences the prices or the cost to go higher than initial clearing, because I think it's very important for us to understand that it's not always the traditional belief, but looking at the reality on the ground.
Okay, the cost didn't actually go higher, it was the same. because it was 500,000 each. So for the two follow-ups, so that's why it was $1 million. But the included in that cost is also the fact that the entire area needs to be surveyed. So that's what's pushing up the cost. These are rough estimates, based on information that I already have. So what you are saying will likely be the case, that the cost will be lower.
And then there was Alan, you had a question?
Okay, hi. That you're associating these dry-seeded fruit wetlands can't be true. Simply, if you look at leptospermum, it's invading the dry limestone plain bottoms throughout the Gallus Plain. It's replacing Acacia saligna. A lot of bottle brushes aren't in wetlands, so I don't think wetlands is actually a factor. Maybe at the species level, but certainly not at the guild level or broader taxonomic level. It's not a factor.
Okay. So far, my observation has been that for these species to really take off, even eucalyptus, they require those wetter habitats, and often it's like with parvistaminea. The species is often occurs in dry habitats, but we found that for recruitment, water is a requirement. So definitely, it's not for the species to persist. It's a specific germination requirement. So they maybe need they maybe germinate only after winter rains, but definitely from what I've observed, they need that bit of water to get them going, but not to keep them going.